Okay, welcome to the Compassionate Capitalist podcast. And for those watching the video of my topic today, which is a really important trend that I see, I've heard about it over the years. It's something that I'm encouraging my investors and entrepreneurs to be aware of, because I really do think that we are in I don't like to use the word perfect storm, considering all the things that are going on in our environment right now, but we are in a place where technology and the affordability of the technology and the feasibility of the technology has finally caught up to the need and the urgency in some cases for people to utilize this. And what am I talking about? I'm talking about vertical farming. Okay. So, I've over the years, I have had, and we're going to get into this with my guest today, Eddy Badrina. I'm going to introduce him in just a second, but he can say hi to the folks that are watching. It's one thing that has crossed my desk, over the years, and all kinds of things. As hydroponics was first starting to come out, I had been involved in an EB5 project where they put in a hydroponics farm. It was not vertical, it was horizontal, but it was a huge boon to the economy down in Alabama. And it was a great opportunity for job creation and things like that. So there's, I've just been kind of watching this space for a while. And when Eddy came across my radar to have this podcast, I said, we got to do it. This is it. Time is right. I want my investors, I want the entrepreneurs up there, because as part of what I talk about in my book, Inside Secrets to Angel Investing, is that you're swimming to the puck, right? That's a phrase that says, here's where trends and technologies and opportunities are going, and you need to be aware of them. So when you look at opportunities, whether you're investing or looking to start a company in that, or be a part of it, or joint venture, look at technology that's out there, then this is where you need to go. We're going to talk about that great opportunity today, because here's something that I want to level set, and then I'm going to actually do my real introduction to Eddy. So according to this is why it's important. According to Allied Market Research, the global vertical farming market size is valued at $2.23 billion in 2018 and is projected to reach $12.7 billion in 2026, with a growth of 24.6% from 2019 to 2026. Because that's just one number. And I looked, so according to the Grandview research, it's very similar, but slightly less. According to the Global Market Insights research, it's larger and growing, and actually going to be a $22 billion industry. Now, that's worldwide, but that just says that there is a lot of organizations and communities that are looking at this as a solution to solve a lot of problems when it comes to getting access to re-engineering how farming is done, but also getting access to locally grown produce and, straight farm to market to table and all of that. And that's what we're going to talk about here today with Eddy. Okay. So Eddy Badrina, he is the CEO of Eden Green Technology. It's a vertical farming technology company, as I've talked about. It's dedicated to changing the way we farm our food and feed our communities. Eddy is a graduate of Texas A&M University and the Bush School for Government and Public Service. During his time in Washington, D.C., he was on the Smithsonian Institute's National Advisory Council for Filipino American Centennial Commemoration, as well as mission-critical roles at the U.S. Department of State and liaisons within those communities. Eddy is on the board of directors for Seed Effect. It's a microfinance nonprofit. And before joining Eden Green Technology, Eddy co-founded BuzzShift, which is a digital strategy agency for mid-sized brands and organizations. And so, first of all, hello, Eddy. Welcome to the show officially.
Karen, thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be on.
Yes, great. And so tell our listeners, tell the compassionate capitalists out there, because what you're doing truly falls within the scope of a compassionate capitalist. So what made you pivot from a company that you co-founded and is still operational to be the CEO of Eden Green Technology?
Yeah, that's a great question. I started, so just a bit of background, I started BuzzShift in 2010 with my business partner, bootstrapped it, brought it up to a size where we were acquired in 2016, actually.
Oh, okay.
And then after we sold it, 11 months later, we bought it back. So it was one of those, I called it mutually decoupling. Uh, and we had a chance to just take a step back and think about, hey, how would we run this better? We did it. We beat all the odds of starting a company, having it last longer than 2 years, having it be profitable, and then taking it to acquisition, successful acquisition. So we just had a chance to take a step back, and one of those things was developing a leadership team that would allow us to pursue other ventures. And so, roughly 2 years after we bought it back, I was in a position just to take a step back and think, hey, what do I want to do that is impactful for the next half of my life, right? I was sort of this halftime moment, if you will. And three things stuck out to me. One was that was put really on my heart was to do hardware and software, one or the other or both. I had done professional services for the better part of 10 years and had been successful with that, gotten the t-shirt. And so I just figured, okay, that's something, and it was something that was very, very much on my heart and my mind of wanting to build a company around that. The second one was having a huge social and cultural impact relative to my level of effort. So I'm 44, and I've had experiences with the State Department doing foreign policy at the highest levels. I was a director of a White House agency, White House Initiative for Asian Americans for 2 years. And then I came back to Dallas, came back to Texas, and that's where I got my start with BuzzShift. So I had done a number of things, but the social and cultural impact really to me was important because it was a culmination of all the things I had done beforehand, and to be able to leverage all of those to impact the community around me or even worldwide was something that was very interesting to me. And then the last thing that was on my mind and my heart was the ability to build a company that had what's known as a redemptive culture. So there's a group out of New York called Praxis Labs, and they talk about a redemptive framework for building organizations, both businesses as well as nonprofits. But most companies are let's call them exploitative in nature. Their leaders eat first. They treat their employees poorly, and the community environment around them is a net negative because of them. For I would say there are a number of companies that are ethical in nature, and that's where the leaders eat alongside their employees. They treat their employees fairly, right? And then it's a net neutral to the community environment around them. I wanted to build a company and build a culture that was redemptive, and that's where the leaders eat last. There's sacrificial leadership involved. Employees are blessed. They're not just treated fairly; they're treated with generosity. And then the community and environment around the company or organization benefits and is there's an additive nature to it, right? So all those three things combined, I saw in Eden Green. And so
Yeah.
I joined Eden Green as the CEO in 2019, and my vision was to have it become a technology company, a technology platform that happens to grow produce, and we do it for the benefit of feeding a lot of people, and for really just disrupting the way that we're farming, the way that we're distributing and supplying food, both in the community and around the world.
Yeah. So what you described there as the way you described the redemptive culture is really what I think conscious capitalism has been trying to promote, but as this concept of, how do you treat your employees? How do you operate within your corporate culture? And then what's the impact in the community around you? And you just spelled that out beautifully. So that's inspiring in and of itself, so thank you for that. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah. So now, so as we said, Eden Green Technology is a vertical farming technology company with this turnkey urban agricultural model that you had referred to as a regenerative business model as well.
Yes.
So what is a regenerative business model?
So that's where intrinsic within the business is the ability to give back, not as an afterthought, but as a part of the business. So, for instance, most businesses, and there's no knock on them, right? There's most businesses, they get their net profit, and then they give a portion of their net profits. And I know some amazing business people who've just dedicated a portion of their retained earnings or net profit towards community involvement. And then there are companies that, for the betterment of their business, are involved in the community. I think with a regenerative business, the key difference is you're actually benefiting the community in the operations of it. So before you get to that last line, right, you're benefiting the community during the operations. And so this is what it looks like for us, at least, and it's different for every business, but for us, when we just even the way the business is built and the way the technology is, so they're 18-foot vertical towers, and over an acre and a half, those vertical towers that have plant spots in them, and they're grown hydroponically, and we can get to that in a second, like what is hydroponics, but they're grown hydroponically. They can produce, that acre and a half produces anywhere from 800 to 900,000 pounds of leafy greens. That's about the equivalent to 33 farming acres, traditional farming acres. But somehow that happens in an acre and a half.
Yeah.
And the water that it uses is the equivalent of 2 households. So our acre and a half
Wow.
facility uses 90,000 gallons of water a year. Your house, my house, uses about 45,000 gallons of water a year, if you can believe that. A farm, to produce that same amount of harvest, would use 860,000 gallons of water.
Wow.
Yeah, because a lot of it's evaporated, a lot of it's runoff, right? It's just not used very efficiently. And then from a labor perspective, this is the cool thing. And again, not only are we environmentally sustainable, but in this acre and a half, you can employ up to 30 full-time people. And that's included in the business plan, included in the profitability piece, is 30 full-time people that are no longer seasonal harvesting or planting workers, right?
Right. Right.
They're there. They're making a living day's wage, and they're being cared for, health benefits, everything. And to plant, monitor, and then harvest and process this produce. So you get 30 people in an acre and a half. Well, where's the most optimal place to put that? It's in the middle of an urban setting. It's in a strategic place where maybe it's next to a grocery store, maybe it's next to a distribution center, but it is within the community in which it serves. So all of a sudden, you've cut down supply chain. So it's not staying 3 or 4 days in a warehouse. It can go, if it's next to a grocery store and you have a packing plant next to it, it can literally go from harvest to market in 48 hours. And what
Right.
that does is it puts the customer first. The customer has fresher produce that honestly tastes amazing and tastes way better than most of the produce you get in stores right now. And it's safer because less hands have touched it, and it lasts longer for them in their refrigerators and on their kitchen tables. So you're benefiting the customer. It's customer centric. You're benefiting the employees because now they have stable jobs in probably walking distance, short distance from where they actually live. They're in an industry that you said is only going to grow by leaps and bounds over the next 10, 20 years. So it's not a dead end job. It's in an industry that's growing, and they can grow within that. They can grow within the greenhouse from picking to harvesting to packing. And then, maybe they want to be a food safety specialist. Maybe they want to
Yeah.
be a greenhouse manager. So all within that are ways to benefit both the employees and then the community around it. And we actually have a program that we set up because we're, as an economic unit, this greenhouse is profitable. This economic unit of a greenhouse can actually give away up to 10% of its produce, and we do 11 harvests a year. So as it's harvested, you can give away some of this produce to a nonprofit, and the nonprofit can fundraise off of the produce that's donated. So
Oh
then all
yeah.
of a sudden you are, if it was just a standalone co-op, call it, that's next door to the greenhouse, that co-op is all of a sudden self-sustainable through that produce that's being donated, and through them fundraising through that in their local community. So, there's really an opportunity to not just set up a greenhouse, not just buy a greenhouse and its technology, but to buy something that has a 501c3 or an arm, an addition to an existing 501c3 that's beneficial to the community, and that is either heavily subsidizing, giving away, or selling at a premium that can then benefit that co-op and that community. Which, by the way, the co-op has to employ people too, right?
Right.
So you can then engage in workforce development programs. So we're thinking, hey, what about a high school high school workforce development program? What about employing people who are at risk? What about people who are coming out of maybe hard previous experiences, coming out of homeless shelters, coming out of halfway homes, coming out of domestic abuse shelters, that can start a new life, start a
Right.
new set of jobs right through this co-op and then through the greenhouse itself. So that's what I talk about when I talk about regenerative.
Yeah.
It's not just about environmental, and it's not even just about economic, and it's all of it together. It's
Yeah.
about regenerating the community.
Wow. Yeah. And you covered a lot with describing that. That was beautiful. So, a couple of questions I still have within that
Yeah,
so what can be grown? Is it, and a lot of your pictures on your website are, and in fact, part of what you just said, I was going to read off of your website. So I'm just going to tell folks, please go to Eden Green, EdenGreen.com, and watch their videos, look at the mission and the things that Eddy just talked about, and just this whole piece of it. So talk about the difference of why hydroponics versus aeroponics,
sure.
and what is it that you can grow or can't grow. Like, for example, clearly, to, I guess, tomatoes and lettuce, and I saw that it's a solution for hemp. You could grow kale, all those kind of things, but probably not
Yeah,
corn and wheat, right?
right.
So talk about
Sure.
how that fits within the food chain, so to speak.
So we can grow over 50 plus varietals of leafy greens, of herbs. We can grow some berries. So when you think about, it's kind of a joke within the company, is we grow outies, not innies. And so if it grows outwards and its root system is fairly light, like if you look at any leafy green or herb, right, the root system is fairly light, and it can work in one of our plant spots, and even up to hemp, and some of the medicinal parts of that, we can grow that with ease and with efficiency. When it gets to things like things that have hardy, woodier stems and roots, that's hard. That's difficult for us to grow. And I think that kind of I would say highlights a piece of the equation, which is we're not the silver bullet. People talk about, I get asked all the time, okay, so who do you think is going to win? And I said, I say all the time, there's not going to be any one winner, because we're all parts of the different parts of a food supply chain, right? And so there's room, absolutely, there's room for traditional farming. We think traditional farmers are some of the hardest working people in America and around the world. Like, they have to deal with not just, what they can control, but a ton of what they can't control, like wind, rain, pestilence, heat, drought, all that, right? And so, we want to come alongside them and say, hey, here's what we can do really, really well. And here are the things that, from a best practices perspective, might be able to help you as you grow the things that you can do really well, like corn, like rice, like some of those other, those other crops. And so, yeah, I would say, what we grow really, really well are leafy greens, kale, arugula, spinach, lettuce, romaine lettuce, butter lettuce, leaf lettuce, and mustard greens are really grow really well in our system. And then herbs, basil, uh, you know, um, thyme, rosemary,
Sure.
all that good stuff. Peppers, we grow great
Yeah.
peppers. And then like strawberries, great in our
Tomatoes.
system. So tomatoes are, it depends, because those tomato stalks get pretty long, right? And so,
Oh, excuse me.
and that's, yeah, that's one of the things that that again, like flat tray greenhouses are great for tomatoes, and they're great for cucumbers. But when you talk about density and growing upwards, there's just some limitations there that,
Sure.
that we can
Okay.
work through. It's a different model.
Well, it may be a next gen of some of the things you do
Oh
once you
yeah,
get footprints established in places. So with that, because one of the things I know that we are challenged with now, and even more so based on things that have happened this year, whether it's environmental destruction or just the things that have happened in some of our inner cities. As a result of the pandemic, we've had a whole change in how we approach work, right? So there's
right,
not only is there, so that's where I talked about, I didn't like using the word the perfect storm, but you've got a lot of money that's looking at how do we redevelop smarter in the way we operate within our inner cities for high density living, and even redeveloped some of our rural areas that have not had job opportunities. They've had a shift of older types of jobs that have moved away, whether it's manufacturing or mining or things like that. And so they're looking for things. There's still people that need to live there. There's still people that need to have jobs there. They still need to have food there. So there's this kind of split. So not suburban, but you got rural and that, right? We're going to be probably working virtual a lot more now that we've figured out ways for people to be effective and efficient in a virtual environment. You're gonna have parking decks. Uh-oh. Okay, so we're back. So I think my question, where I was going with that was, we have this change in our how we approach work, right? And there's going to
right.
be office buildings that are empty, parking decks that are empty. So can your technology be retrofitted and used within a office building structure, or on top of a building, or on a parking deck, and something like that? Can it be done that way, or does it have to be on flat new ground?
It does not have to be on flat new ground necessarily. It does need to be flat. But the good thing is we don't need soil. We really just need flat cement on which to put our mechanical engineering and plumbing platform, as well as our vines. So really, there's some retrofitting that would be done. It would probably affect the capex costs, right? But it's not impossible. And I would say, as the technology, as there's just innovations all around the industry, I think that's going to become more and more of a thing, right? And from an urban setting, you're able to charge a little bit more in terms of locally grown. We're a huge increase across the industry in the demand for locally grown food, and people willing to pay premiums for that because they want to know where their food comes from. And so with that comes the ability to just building an extra little cost, if you're going to retrofit buildings, if you're going to put things in innovative new places like parking garages, right on the top of parking garages or buildings. So that is where I think the industry is headed, and that's definitely where we're headed.
Yeah. Okay. So, um, we talked a little bit, mentioned the pandemic a bit. So has that, because we have had a major, supply chain disruption when it comes to, produce. Like when it first happened, I was like, okay, what is it that I have to have? Well, I have to
Right.
have lettuce. I've got to have tomatoes. I'm going to see if I can grow some zucchini,
Right.
and let's go with a little bit of chard, right?
Well,
Because
well,
I was like,
here in Texas, there was an I think HEB put out, there's a two person or two brisket limit per person.
yeah. So I don't have a green thumb. I mean, I do pretty good with my orchid. It took forever to get a tomato, and it took me a long time to figure out how I'm actually supposed to fertilize the zucchini for it to actually grow. These little things are not a zucchini. So, it is a skilled job that I think you'll be having people do when they're managing the growth of your vegetables and stuff. But so, my question is, has the COVID, the pandemic, been a wake up call that people said, oh, communities are like, oh, we really do need to look at these other things, and we need to look at other ways of doing this? You're
This,
you're you're here.
yeah, this Zoom, my Zoom client, I don't know what is going on. I apologize.
That's all right. Did you hear my question?
I did.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, I think, in terms of uh, just the basic foodstuffs that people need, it's going to be an issue with locally grown. Like, people are going to want, like, if you tell my wife that she cannot get strawberries 12 months out of the year, like, there's going to be problems, right? So there's basic food things that people need, but then there's also just the demand that people are used to about, about food, about produce, about just basic foodstuffs that people want year round. And so that's what locally grown addresses. It addresses, I think there's a new definition of locally grown. First, it's accessible, right? Everyone has access to it, from the top of, the highest socioeconomic status, down to folks who are underserved, and local provides for that. I think locally grown is going to come to mean consistent. You can get it year round, season agnostic. And then lastly, locally grown is going to mean safe and accountable, because you know where you're getting the food from. I think that new definition of local and locally grown is really going to expand, and people are going to demand it. The consumer will demand that new definition, and anyone who doesn't, who can't meet that, any grocer, any retailer who can't meet that, is going to have problems.
Yeah, right. It's been a challenge. So I think there's a couple of things that I'm working on as a result of the Opportunity Zone funds,
Yeah,
going into these cities. There's a movement afoot of, um, really the Black and Brown community coming together and taking charge and pooling their money to invest and redevelop the community
right,
where they live. I've
right.
got a project I'm working on right now on that in North Carolina that I think this is going to be a good
Mm,
piece of that particular puzzle, which kind of leans into. Um, so talk about where your, like how what does it cost to do this? Or is it the kind of thing
sure.
that you're selling it as a turnkey, or you're looking for joint venture partners of community and financing sources to go in and do that, and
Yeah.
then you maintain an interest in it? Talk about a little bit about your business models, and maybe you have a variety of business models that communities can use or reach out to you to embrace this.
Sure. So our main business model is, I would just call, enterprise level, right? You're feeding tens of thousands of people. And so the likely suspects for that are retailers, wholesalers, they're philanthropies, nonprofits that want to feed a community, and then there are regional and nation states, government authorities that want to feed populations. So with that is commensurate with that is an investment that you can imagine is worthy of feeding tens of thousands of people. And so you work backwards with that. Then people, okay, is it an investor-led, entrepreneur-led investor group? Is it government spending, World Health Organization type expenditures, or is it a nonprofit who has a number of big donors that want to commit to this because they know it's sustainable economically, and they won't have to put another dollar in it, right? So that's the type of level that you're looking at. We are working on smaller footprints that I would say are sub-$1 million, that are maybe 4 or 8,000 square feet, right? That's still a lot of produce, uh, compared to 62,000 square feet, which is an acre and a half, right? But at the same time, it's really more accessible, if you will. The profitability comes with scale, so it's less profitable, right? It may even be break even, but it comes at a lower price point.
Yeah. Okay. So now is what's I mean, I have over the years seen, personal units, and there's a thing that there's
Yeah.
a multi-level that resells these things to restaurants and things, that's just sort of like your individual salad green tower kind of a
Right.
deal. And
Right.
you've got, an acre and a half and
Right.
similar. So what's unique? Because I know part of it is licensing technology. You probably have kind of like made a better pizza. You get pieces of parts and put it together better. But what's a unique approach that you're doing that makes you stand out?
Well, so our vertical towers are patented in the U.S. and
Okay.
then abroad. There's no one else doing vertical farming like we are, in combination with greenhouse. So the things that are not patented, we've put together from the industry leaders in terms of automation of the greenhouse, automation of water and electricity in the plumbing, uh, monitoring, and then just automatic adjustments, automation of adjustments to all of those variables that you're trying to control for. We have perfected that model. So that's what makes us different than your normal flat tray hydroponics, which have some automation towards it, but again, they don't have the density to be economically sustainable in that small of a footprint. And then with other vertical farms, I would say the biggest deterrent is the electricity costs. Most of them are in warehouses. They're in controlled environments, fully controlled environments, and their electric costs are that of data centers. They're
Really?
oh, they're hundreds of thousands of dollars a month just in electricity costs because they're running LED lights to for all of their plants, whereas we're using sunlight.
Oh, so that would be part of that CapEx cost if you were going to try to
Absolutely.
retrofit, some of these
Yeah.
office buildings and malls. I was
Yeah.
thinking about that. We got big box, the way we do retail.
Right.
If we ever thought online commerce was going to, that's so much changed.
Yeah.
So, but that would be part of that cock. But, there are solutions where, with solar or other things that they make use of as a way to offset the grid cost of electricity, they
Right.
can figure it out. And you would hope that if somebody is, of a city or a community is looking at this kind of a solution to solve their problem for, grown local and access to this food, they would also be looking at ways to cut their energy fossil fuel consumption as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So as we start to wind down here, Eddy, what else would you like to add that we haven't talked about yet?
I would just say, man, it is a new way of thinking. The thing that we come across with the most is it believable, right? It's almost too good to be true. And if you look at photos and if you actually walk through the greenhouse, and I invite folks as things start to open back up to come down and see our R&D facility in Dallas, Fort Worth. We'd love to have y'all. But believability is one, and then just education on this new way of thinking about the food supply chain, the new way of thinking about farming. It's too innovative and so it's innovative. It's the believability is such, it's so new, right? That you just have a hard time wrapping your mind around it. And so as we think about and as we think about spreading the word about this, or just even understanding it, I would encourage people just to do education, like educate themselves on where the food supply chain is headed. Reading books that talk about that talk about the new way of providing nutrition to yourself and to others. Books like How Not to Die. It's a great book on like foods scientifically proven to prevent and reverse disease. Hint, hint. It's a lot of greens, right?
Yeah.
So I think there's an education piece, and we're trying to just educate a lot of folks on our website, not just on Eden Green, but on hydroponic farming, on greenhouse technology, on industry standards of food safety, and on innovation as a whole when it comes to growing. So that's what we're really interested in. I think a lot of other folks are interested in as well. And so if they want to educate themselves some more, to look us up on edengreen.com or look us up on any of our social handles. We're always educating. That's the main thrust of all of our marketing, is less promotion about us and more about education about how things are being grown better, more efficiently, more sustainably for the community around us.
Right. Well, I tell you, everything, you're just ringing all the bells for me, because, the way your company itself is designed, as you talked about, the redemptive nature of it, the participation in the community in a regenerative way, that's the conscious capitalism. And then to my investors and entrepreneurs out there that are involved and committed to compassionate capitalism, what better way to put your money to work? What if you're for funds, for private equity funds, for family offices, to partner up with maybe boots on the ground, so to speak, to put this into a community, and or outright buy it, however you get involved in it, to be able to do this, to make money, but also have such a profound impact on the community that one of these vertical farms is going to be put into. I just think that that's such a win-win on so many levels.
Yeah, absolutely. We think so too.
Yeah. So I'm just delighted to have been introduced to you and have you be a guest on my show today, Eddy. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what we can put together as we move forward to solve some of these problems for our communities.
Well, thanks again for having me. It was an absolute pleasure to talk with you, and looking forward to continuing the conversation.
All right. Thank you. And to everybody, onwards and upwards. And there'll be for those on the podcast, stay tuned to my post message. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.